Hi everyone, Sid here. I am in the car driving to work on this glorious day, and today I wanted to talk about the Dallas shootings that happened, or rather I want to use the events in Dallas as a pretext to talk about yet another topic that I've wanted to cover on this channel for a while, which is the question of when bad things happen to cops. I came up with, the first time I thought about this, it actually didn't involve a dead cop. It was 2 years ago, and during that shooting in Ottawa, where some veteran got shot. I don't remember the details, but one thing that I think I remember is that the perpetrator cited Canada's involvement in Afghanistan as the reason for his actions. And I remember, amidst all the knee-jerk labeling of this guy as a hero and all that stuff, I remember asking myself, well, was this guy deployed? I think that question for this instance, it wouldn't be like a case closer either way, but I think that for a guy shooting another guy, citing Canada's involvement in Afghanistan, I think whether or not the victim was deployed in Afghanistan is a relevant question. And I remember not long after, I think it was in New York, where some cops were just sitting in their car, and some guy just walked up to their window and blew them away. And I remember asking the same question I ask whenever bad things happen to cops now, which is, what kind of cops were they? Because, and I want to make this clear, in case anyone thinks otherwise. No matter what, my heart goes out to their families, their wives, children, relatives, friends, and all that stuff. I think that, if you're married to a bank robber, and the bank robber gets shot dead, as long as you weren't driving the getaway car or helping to plot to rob the bank, I think that I don't think it's wrong to associate you with the actions of this bank robber. So coming back to cops, I want to remind you of the dual role of cops, which I made a whole video about, which I think is extremely important, especially because almost nobody thinks of it this way. It bugs me so much. But police officers can be peace officers or law enforcement officers, and I am all for peacekeeping. I think peacekeeping is great. Law enforcement, on the other hand, is, as we know it, is completely immoral, and when it's backed by taxation, yada, 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 you know what I'm talking about if you're at all familiar with this channel. But coming back to the cops in New York, and cops in general, really, because I think it was 5 cops who were shot in Dallas on Friday, I think. The things I'm about to discuss apply to them just as well, which is, okay, I'm gonna pick one. So when those cops in New York were blown away at random, I remember asking the question, how many traffic tickets did they give out? Which is a more specific version of the question, how much time did they spend acting as law enforcers compared to acting as peacekeepers? And I think that, again, the answer to that question doesn't have any bearing on my feelings for these people's families, but it does have bearing on my feelings for the cops. And another thing I want to make perfectly clear, the whole killing cops, I don't advocate killing cops because as much as in the abstract I can see the validity of the argument for self-defense, even if they are just sitting in their cop cars doing nothing, I don't advocate it, and I would disassociate from someone if I knew that they were a cop killer, because killing cops will give us the opposite of freedom. Something I've been saying for years is every cop you kill will be replaced by 2 cops in tougher body armor. I think that no matter how much I can understand the frustration that people have with cops, especially when they're acting as law enforcers, which is bullshit. I don't think that killing cops is the way to go, because there's a demand for state. There's a demand for the state, and as long as that demand for the state exists and is recognized as sane somehow, that's where every dead cop shot dead will be replaced by 2 cops in tougher body armor. It's like a Hydra. Coming back to those 2 cops in New York, or those 5 cops in Dallas, I always wonder, like, what kind of cops were they? If they were, gleefully handing out if they were gleefully handing out speeding tickets and using the traffic code as a pretext to enforce more bullying on their prey, then no, I don't really feel bad for them. It's like no, I'm gonna finish this thought before going on that tangent I almost went on. So yeah, if they were like gleefully handing out speeding tickets throughout most of their careers, then no, I don't really feel bad for them. Whereas if they were like that cop who called into Freedom Main Radio, if I can find the link to it, I'll link to it below. I actually wanted to use that conversation as a pretext to shoot another video. But basically, if they were more like that cop who really, as much as is within his power, tries to act as a peacekeeper. I remember him going on a rant about how evil the war on drugs is and all that stuff. It's refreshing to speak to cops, or hear cops speak who get that. But if they were that kind of cop, then yes, I would absolutely feel bad and empathetic towards them. Shit, now I forgot the tangent I almost went off on. Oh yes, well, something I will say is I will link below here to 3 videos that I watched on the day that I learned of these Dallas shootings, and I enjoyed all 3 of these videos for wildly different reasons. The 3 videos were by Stephan, Molyneux, Adam Kokesh, and Hood Gaming TV. I didn't think I would be saying Stephan, Molyneux, and Hood Gaming TV in the same sentence, but I'll tell you something. I enjoyed his video because of his personal experience that he brought to it. I mean, I grew up in the suburbs of Montreal, okay? And I've been pulled over for driving while black. And there was... I can't imagine how much worse it would be if I grew up in the hood. And it's funny because it's always fucking traffic. I have a love-hate relationship with the traffic code, which is mostly hate. The traffic code is one of those things where, in the abstract, I get why it exists, but it is used as a pretext to enforce more violence on people. Whenever I make the mistake of watching the show Cops, which invariably makes me angry at some point, Cops, the cases in Cops always start with one of 2 things: domestic violence, which is actually peacekeeping. So depending on what happens, I kind of don't have that much of a problem with that. But the other thing is traffic. It's always some stupid no signaling or a taillight is out, and then whoops, you get pulled over, and whoops, you have some warrant for some victimless code violation like drug possession, and whoops, you're spending the night in jail that night. It really sucks to have this monopoly on enforcing arbitrary rules that the cops themselves are exempt of. And yeah, so I'm going to try and bring it back to the initial point, which is things to consider when bad things happen to cops. I think that when... Oh, that's the tangent I wanted to go on. Thank you, Sydney. When even the good cops that spend most of their careers acting as peacekeepers or as much as they possibly can, and actively seek out those roles, I'm sure a significant amount of them, I don't want to play percentages, but I'm sure a significant amount of them should have quotes around that good cop phrase, because I'm sure a lot of them have stood by watching a bad cop lose their shit over some nonsense. And I'm reminded of a meme I saw where it's one of those smiling cops standing next to his cop car, and the text reads, "I'm a good cop. I just stand by while bad cops lose their shit over some nonsense." That's not the text. But I just stand by while bad cops beat the shit out of people and abuse their power. But I'm still a good cop, right? And I think that's a legitimate question. It's, you know, when a good cop stands by idly and watches a bad cop lose his shit, that good cop would be a bad cop enabler, basically. Like, I understand one of my backgrounds is in customer service, and I can totally get the importance of having a unified front in front of the customers. However, if one of my colleagues is having a screaming argument with a customer, it would be kind of nuts for me to just stand there and not intervene. I get how it can be challenging depending on the situation, but the unified front is not really the issue when you're enabling craziness. I mean, even the fucking barrel roll cop, when he drew his gun, surrounded by teenagers, like, the two cops that were with him at the time, they like instantly ran up to him and just tapped him on the shoulder and then went off. They still let him do his thing, but they at least did something to let him know, dude, you can't be drawing your gun around teenagers. And that's the kind of thing, like, let's say those two cops that tapped their hand on the crazy ass guy, I'd put smaller quotes around the good cop for those two, based on that situation. But those are instances of, even when the cops are acting as peacekeepers as much as they can, to wonder, like, were they there when some bad cop was losing his shit and acting a fool, and what did they do? So I think these are important things to consider when bad things happen to cops, because you know, the knee-jerk reaction of calling these guys heroes and shit like that, it's I don't think it's right or accurate, but also I don't think that the knee-jerk reaction is saying serves them right for enforcing the monopoly on violence and that stuff. I don't think that's right either, because there are good cops. There can't not be. My rule of thumb is the newer you are and the lower you are in the pyramid, the more benefit of the doubt I give you. And that's not just true for cops. I think that, again, coming back to this demand for the state, there's a lot of good people who go into government thinking that they're going to help people, and they're obviously, the pension and things like that must be great incentives, but I think most people who apply for government jobs, they don't do so because they're thinking, yeah, I want a pretext to bully people around without any accountability. And I think that when you get in there, then you can either be disillusioned or corrupted. And that's why the lower you are in the pyramid, the more benefit of the doubt I'll give you. And the higher up you are in the pyramid, the more I assume that you've been corrupted, and the more likely I am to just say that you're some evil bureaucrat. So yeah, these are things to consider. I think that it's a shame that for cops, when bad things happen to them, that to me the best strategy is to really deal with it on a case-by-case basis. I mean, when someone dies, violently, that I have to kind of dig into hypotheses about how this person's career went is it sucks. But I think that it's the best way, and I think that says something about the job of a police officer. I really wish that, I yearn to see police officers acting as peacekeepers. And as a matter of fact, that's my favorite thing by far about snowstorms, is that when there's a snowstorm and people are like sliding around and shit, that's when I see an upsurge of cops acting as peacekeepers, redirecting traffic while your car is being loaded up on a tow truck is totally peacekeeping. And I applaud cops in that moment. But sadly, the vast majority of the time when I see cops doing their thing, they're acting as law enforcers, more specifically traffic, which I've already done that rant on. So, yeah, until I wish I saw more peacekeeping and less law enforcing. But until that day arrives, I think that these questions that I shared with you are the best strategy to help process, your feelings and thoughts when a police officer gets shot. So I think that wraps it up. Thank you very much for watching. Please like, share, leave your comments. This is another one of those topics where I really am curious to see what your thoughts are. You'll find links under here to my Twitter and Tumblr. And subscribe to me on YouTube. That would be really appreciated. And thank you very much. I will see you soon. Later.